Hello and welcome to another of my pipe shows or pipe videos, whatever you want to call them. I'm going to start off by having a glass of milk. And the reason for that is I've been on the go all day and my voice is a little bit hoarse. So I want to relax and help mellow it out by smoking my pipe. That's the plan anyway. And actually, as you watch this, I will be travelling back from an event. So I'm actually recording this on Thursday and I need to schedule it up so it goes out on the Sunday. I've got to try and remember to do that because sometimes I do this and then I forget to schedule the thing. But anyway, yeah, so I'm a few days early with this, but I wanted to get it done so that I don't miss out my regular Sunday pipe smoke with all you lovely people. And thank you very much for tuning in. I do really appreciate it. And for your wonderful comments as well, which has been very nice. So now last time I think I was smoking this one, which is a Peterson's straight pipe. I don't know what the shape is. It looks like a billiard to me, but somebody somewhere will tell me it's something else. I think it was, what was that called? It's Shamrock. And I'm going to actually smoke this one, which is called Cool Ray. And I think it just says made in London. So it's a sort of generic thing. But it's another straight pipe. I do kind of like straight pipes, up periscope, you know, that sort of thing. But I also like the old bent pipes as well. But I've been smoking this one a couple of days recently and I wanted to give that one a rest. So I'm going to smoke this one, if that's all right. And I'm still working my way through some samples. And here we are today. I've been looking forward to this one because, well, I suppose I've been looking forward to this with trepidation, I should say, because this is Gowith Hogarth, and it's pipe tobacco, but it's coffee and caramel. Now, I like coffee and I like caramel, but I don't know if I like them together. It sounds quite sweet and bitter, doesn't it? So I'm going to get my little trusty thingy here and let's just have a little sniff. It's interesting. There is a bit of coffee on there. Let's just chuck some of this out. Thank you very much to the gentleman who sent these samples, and I do appreciate these samples. Really do help me make the choice for buying a tin. And so let's just fill up the pipe. Now, I want to talk a little bit about, do you watch and do you follow Father John from A Priest's Progress? He was mentioning me in his recent video, recent to as I record this anyway, because he was talking about farming. Prior to that, he was talking about MP3 players, which I was very amused to listen to his little history on how they came about. Because back in the day, I suppose when MP3s were first sort of thought of as, and the iPhone and the iPad, not the iPad, the iPod, beg your pardon, the iPod first came along, there was a chap called Adam Curry, and he and some other guy who invented RSS feed, and I forget his name, kind of invented the whole podcast term. And I was actually the fourth British podcaster in the country in 2005. And I put together something, at the time it was called the Richard Vobes Radio Show. And it was a bit lame, but I did it every day. And then it adapted after about 3 months or 6 months into the Vobes Show. And then that ran for about 8 or 9 years. Then it went to YouTube and the lovely Julia joined me. And we used to do shows which were sort of reminiscent shows. They were sort of madcap fun, and there'll be maybe some people watching who remember those days and used to tune in. And actually this channel that you're watching now with the pipe smoking, if you go far back, you'll see perhaps some of those earlier Vobes shows, although the very early ones were on my Richard Vobes channel. It's all very complicated because then I thought, oh, actually I better set up a channel to do just the Vobes show. So some of the earlier ones are actually on the other channel. But anyway, it was interesting to hear Father John reminiscent about MP3 players, and they were great. I I never bought into Apple. I never liked Apple, but I had an iRiver. And if you remember the iRivers, they were amazing. Underrated. I think in the end they got bought out, but they were underrated and absolutely brilliant. And I used it to record with when I was doing the Vobes Show, because we'd go out on location and we'd film, not film, but record the audio and do what they called back then, what did they call it? A sound seeing tour. So you'd be basically giving a narration of what you see and you describe it. And because at the time I was an avid listener to Radio 4, it was very natural for me to sort of wander about the countryside, go to stately homes, beautiful churches, old buildings, at events, exhibitions and that sort of thing, and relate into this iRiver recorder, which was, you know, an MP3 recorder. I still have MP3 recorders and I still have the iRiver somewhere, but as I say, I've been running around a bit, otherwise I would have pulled it up. But anyway, let's get the pipe going. It helps if we get the flame going. There we are. And we'll see what we think about coffee and caramel. I keep losing my temper, as we all do, and I was using a bit of dowel, and now I've lost that. It must have rolled away. That's a nuisance. I'm actually going away first thing in the morning and I don't know what I've done with the bloody thing. A stick will do it, you know, all sorts of things. The flat head of a nail will do it. Anyway, I hope you can hear me all right. Have I got the microphone on in the correct place? It's all a bit of a rush. Yeah, so that's very nice. I quite like that. Sorry, I'm slightly preoccupied now because I want my tamper. If you're a pipe smoker, you know what that means. I can use my pinky or my thumb or something. It's just I know I put it down on here just before I press the button to record. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's not your problem, is it? I think I just need to tamp that down a bit. As long as I've got the lighter, otherwise we are in trouble. Now, Father John was saying he had this rather brilliant book. I think it's by George Stuart Evans, called Ask the Men Who Cut the Hay. I have that book. I think I've got 2 of that book, actually. I read it. I'm just looking over here to see if it's on this particular shelf. I was thinking, where are they? I read it a while ago. Beautiful. George Stuart Evans was a great writer of the countryside and wrote several books on that ilk. It is, for those that haven't seen Father John's show, recent video, it's a book written, I suppose, in the well, let me think, it's probably written at the end, in the end of the 30s or something like that, in the 30s, I can't remember exactly. And it's a record of some of the jobs that used to be connected with farming, from haymaking to, I think, the stone throwing, all the different jobs, hedge laying probably. I can't remember off the top of my head the index of that particular book. But he's written several books, and he was a great writer on all those things. As was Adrian Bell. Adrian Bell's another author who wrote many books on beautiful poetic writing. He wrote on farming and countryside. A.G. Street is another writer who was a farmer. And these are all a similar sort of time. George Stuart Evans might have been, if I've got it correct, he might have been writing actually in the 60s of his experiences in the 30s. That might have been it, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's all old, it's all amazing stuff. It's fascinating. The old way of doing things, and I like that. And when Julia and I set foot on our land that we're purchasing at the moment, we intend to do very much more of that old stuff and relive that life. It's us, it speaks to us. And I grew up next to a farm. I grew up with a farmer, and I used to go over the fields and pick up clay pipes, broken clay pipes after the fields had been ploughed. And you would see these clay pipe bowls, sometimes with Red Indians on them, or is that Native Americans now, and broken stems. And something about living next to that farm spoke to me, and I knew one day I would be on the land, and it seems that that's happening fairly soon. So I'm very thrilled about that. I'm very excited. I haven't quite got my pipe, I haven't got my tamper. I've just spotted something that will do, bear with me. This is a back scratcher. That looks like it's got a rubber bit on the bottom of that, but never mind. That's better. Ouch. It's melting the rubber. Well, that's perfect now. I won't be taking that with me as a tamper. I'll find another piece of dowel or something. I will have to invest in a proper tamper and try and keep it with me. But as you can see, dowel is not ideal because it rolls away. But anyway, now I wanted to show you a book. This is a fantastic book. What is it? It's called The Farming Ladder by G.H. Henderson. And this was written, look at this, this has got one of those lovely old, I don't know if you can see that picture. And it's about two lads who, let me just see when this is written. Here they are, these are the two. Can you see that? I can't see it, but you can see it. And this was in, I think it's 1940s. Because it would be in, yeah, I think that's not, I can't read it actually. It's in Roman numerals. MCMXLIV. So something, 34 is that? Is that 1934, something like that, or 1924? 43, July 44. Anyway, this became, The Farming Ladder, became the beginning of, well, in a way, it's a success story and a sad story. It's sad for the industry in some respects because these two blokes bought a piece of land which wasn't very good land. Brothers they were, and George had been wanting to be a farmer and itching to be a farmer for ages. And he'd gone off and done some sheep farming. He did all sorts of little jobs on the farming and worked for others to learn lots of skills. His brother was very much more on design and bookkeeping and business stuff. And between the two of them, they put their heads together and they worked out that farming could be a success and you could make money from it. He wasn't into subsidies, but he was very much on mixed farming because he realised that actually you didn't need to take anything, pretty much, from outside, so no artificial fertilisers, no chemicals, none of that business. You could use the animals to create your own manure, and you could grow the food to feed the animals. And you basically, he worked out, he called it the farming ladder, but it was circular. It was more of a circular thing. and he could sell the produce at the markets and various things. And he worked out a system, really, to be pretty much self-sufficient. And it changed the nature of farmers, because a lot of farmers, they had a sort of laissez-faire type attitude to it. You know, some years they would go, oh, well, we lost a bit of money, we'll make it back next year. And this would go on, and they would even out, and it wasn't, they didn't overly worry. Now, I'm not an expert on any of this, so don't take my word too heavily, but this is from what I have read about the story of farmers and their experiences that have come through people like George Stuart Evans and others. Fred Archer was another one, actually, talking about that. It's just his name's come to mind. And but then these guys worked out a business plan. And so it became a success in some respects, that you could operate as a farmer without the need of anything else, which was fantastic. And a lot of people bought this book in the 1940s and they copied it and they made a success. He said, but it's, you know, it's a lot of hard work. You've got to do the graft, and you could, and you had to be very disciplined. But of course, this really then led the way to turning farming, which was supplying local people and a way of life, into an industry, into a bigger industry. And what happened then is these bigger players came in and said, well, we can give you bigger margins because we'll give you chemicals. You don't need to do such and such. You don't need to have crop rotation. These guys understood crop rotation. They understood the whole system of growing, well, everything really. Oat Hill Farm was their farm. And this became a blueprint about having sheep, having poultry, having cattle, about the farm. And this was their story. And yeah, it's a kind of, as I say, really, it's a bittersweet story, because the industry sort of jumped on it and gave the impression that, yeah, you could make a lot of money. But of course, actually what really happened was that they, as we've seen with farming, they became more and more dependent on big contracts, subsidies, and that was really, once you did that, you kind of got farmers, and they needed to expand and grow because they felt that you needed to have a bigger farm with more animals or more acreage and crops in order to make money. Hedges were taken out, so smaller farms, lots of them, that supported towns and villages were basically decimated, amalgamated, and then you had the train transportation, you had lorries, and you had the traffic that could take them further afield, and of course you had a global farming, and you had threats from places like Ukraine, the breadbasket for wheat, and you couldn't compete and all of that. Whereas in the past, when it was just you and your locality, you knew everyone, you had a way of life, and it was hard work, and wasn't about making a lot of money, but it was a way of life. And in my mind, that's an important aspect of living. Now, what was I was going to say something else. I have another book, actually. I can't remember the name of the author now. And it was I can't remember the name of the book either, but it was about the disappearing village. And I think it was written in the 90s, or was it written in the 2000s? Anyway, what it was saying, it took a village, and it showed how villages have become now empty, devoid of people. People used to work on the farm, they've become empty, and now they are very domiciled places that people go to retire. And villages used to be incredibly busy. You had a school, you had the farm, you had the blacksmith, all the people working. They were a unit. And this world the modern world is very much, and this globalization of everything has very much killed the camaraderie, the reliance on people in your village or small town, the small businesses, the family run, the independent, the blacksmith, the baker, and people will say, of course they'll say, but technology, we need to move on and what have you. But my argument comes down, and I think this is very much what Father John was saying, that it comes really down at the end of the day to happiness. What makes you happy? He said, a lot of people unsubscribe because they have this concept that a priest cannot enjoy himself. And I do think that work doesn't necessarily have to be that it isn't hard and it's got to be easy, but it's got to be satisfying. And when you read some of these stories about the farmers who knew their stuff, they might moan about working 12-hour days in all weathers with hand tools and back-breaking stuff. But it's funny, because at the same time they say I wouldn't change it for the world. They wouldn't want to work in an office. They didn't want a cushy job. They felt that actually getting out there and toil, ask the men who cut the hay, that doing this stuff was not only was it worthwhile, but it was right. It was right and it was proper. And some of these jobs that we see people doing now, I think they would turn in their grave and think that that is not proper. And that's just an interesting thing. Anyway, I wanted to comment on all of that. I'm going to have to get this uploaded and sorted out and go and get something to eat. But I hope that was enjoyable. And thanks to Father John for reminding me about that wonderful book and others. And when I've got my bit of land and I can hold the deeds in my hand and we can get on it and we can do stuff. Yes, Julia and I do intend to do some stuff the hard way and not take it easy, but we want to be as self-reliant as we can and grow some stuff and do come and watch it. Well, I'll let you know when it's all up and running. Anyway, in the meantime, have a lovely day. Thank you for watching. I can taste the caramel. I can't taste the coffee. That's my verdict. Which is just as good because I don't like coffee in sweet things, in cakes. I don't like coffee cake or sweets or anything like that. I like coffee as coffee. But this is quite mild. It's quite pleasant. Bit sweet. But there we are. Till next time. Goodbye.